new iPhone, as well as a bucket load of new accessories. And this is where we find out if these things are actually good or not. So let's unbox the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus first. And notice, Apple did say this is now an even smaller package compared to last year's phones. I have to be honest, I can barely tell the difference. It's about 6% smaller in reality. But it does look like they have rearranged the entire inside to accommodate this shrink. So now you get the phone, there's a USB-C cable combined with a SIM ejector, and it looks like no Apple stickers this time around. And here's our iPhone 16. These are also apparently the first iPhones to have 100% wood fiber-based packaging, which is good, although last year's phones had 99%, so let's not get too excited. And this is iPhone 16 Plus. And I'm actually kind of happy about these colors. This is the closest we've been in a long time to, well, just actually proper blue and pink. Very expensive gender reveal, anyone? So, having actually used the phones, I would genuinely say the audio mixing feature is unexpectedly crazy cool. So you guys start having a conversation now. And while they're talking behind the phone, I'm talking to you guys standing in front of the phone. So this is kind of like the equivalent of me being on a movie set and I'm the cameraman and they're the actors that I'm filming. Hey, let's see what that clip looked like. So open it up, head into the edit, and then click audio mix. So there's 4 options here. We'll start with the default way that the iPhone sounds.
What are your tips for making?
And while they're talking behind the phone, I'm talking to you guys standing in front of the phone. Bit of a mess, right? But then you click in frame.
Flour, so you want double flour, so it's like really fine. And the eggs, you want really rich.
My audio basically disappears. It's like a magic trick. There is more to this feature, but I'll get to it when we talk about the Pro phones. Okay, so what about gaming? Because the iPhone 16s have jumped forward 2 generations in terms of their chip this time around. This should be one of the biggest changes, and now also means that these phones have access to that same library of console games that only the pros could play last year. So why don't we see how they run? Man, the idea of playing like proper console Assassin's Creed on my phone is basically a childhood dream. Okay, really impressive draw distances, meaning that like, it's kind of crazy that I can see stuff happening on the other side of this massive city. The game is running smooth, it's a very consistent 30 frames per second. I would say you can tell that a lot of settings have had to be very far dialed back from the console versions, to the point where it does kind of still look like a mobile game, but then the upside is that it doesn't feel like a mobile game in terms of the scope of it. It's massive. I'm impressed. I'm not blown away, but I'm impressed. Now, two of the most obvious changes on the iPhone 16 are both camera related. One is the new layout of the cameras, which unlocks this new option in the camera app called spatial video. And I have played around with it. It's lower quality than normal video. It only shoots in 1080p. But if you do somehow happen to have a Vision Pro lying around, it is surprisingly transportative. It really does take you there. But then again, this was the first time I used my Vision Pro since my review 6 months ago. This isn't a useful enough gadget for this feature that only works on this gadget to mean anything. But that might change in the future. The second thing is this new camera control that you get on the side. This is the thing that's in all the TikToks. This is what people are talking about. So a heavy press on it takes a photo. A light press activates the zoom slider, so you have full control over zoom by swiping along it. And then a double light press opens up a menu, which if you don't want the swipe gesture to control zoom, allows you to select something else that it can control. And when I first went hands-on with it, my very first hot take was, why? Like, who asked for this? So now that I've had some proper time to get to know it, has my opinion changed? Well, it has allowed me to appreciate the attention to detail that's gone into it. I like the fact that it's flush with the body of the phone, so it's not yet another protrusion that makes the thing uncomfortable to hold. I like that you have a surprising amount of control over how the control works, with settings like how firm you need to press to activate the thing. I like the little bit of haptic feedback you get every time you hit a key magnification number as you're zooming in. And it is quite cool that the official Apple cases cover and protect the camera control while keeping the swiping gestures completely usable. But no, my opinion has not changed. I think this is dumb. You have to lower your grip to reach it. You have to arch your thumb in a way that genuinely causes me hand strain. You got to hold your phone tighter than usual because you're now supporting it less. And after all that, you're more likely to get last-minute camera shake because you're heavy pressing a button as opposed to lightly tapping your screen. And if that wasn't enough, it also feels like in trying to make this camera control work for both the portrait orientations and the landscape orientations, they've just made it not good with either. Because for portrait, it needs to be higher up, so you're not going like this. And for landscape, it needs to be lower, like here, so you can actually reach it without using some weird, unconventional hand claw. Separately though, I will say I appreciate how you can now pause a video recording, so you can have multiple separate clips in one video, as opposed to having multiple videos. And also how you don't need to stop whatever music is playing on your phone when you start recording. These are both overdue, but good improvements for creators in iOS 18. But what about the photo quality? Because while the main camera hasn't changed on this 16, you know that new A18 chip that the phone has? It does contain a brand new image signal processor, which every year is becoming a bigger factor for your photos. So I thought this would be a fun thing to do. This is the iPhone 16, this is last year's iPhone 15, and then this is an iPhone 12, which I imagine is closer to what most of you might be upgrading from. Okay, I'm gonna jump in the shot and finger guns. Why did I say that? Right. Yeah, there's basically zero difference between the 15 and the 16. You can definitely see substantial upgrades from the 12 in terms of detail, texture, color. That's not really something to brag about. That's expected. And between the 15 and 16, I can't see anything. The 16, though, can get way closer to things to take macro photos now that the ultra-wide camera has autofocus. And there is some improvement to the colors and the overall smoothness when it comes to night photos. I guess because there's more processing in low light shots, you notice the difference in the processor more. Oh yeah, and the other thing, because the chip is faster this time around, these new iPhones can do way better quality quick take video. You know when you're in photo mode but you just need to capture something right now, you can hold down on the camera button. And iPhones used to take a squarish looking lower resolution video. That's what most phones do, because when you're in photo mode, your phone is ready and geared to taking photos, not video. But the new phones can just go straight into full resolution 4K recording. But let's be very clear, if what you're after is big camera improvements, this ain't it. That's coming on the 16 Pros, which I'm getting to. The only other camera feature that Apple did spend a fair bit of time talking about is photographic styles, and how this year they're splitting these styles into mood, which are more the striking filter-like settings, and then undertones, which are more about how you want to look in your photos. Traditionally, iPhones have always tended to make skin tones a little warmer than they are in reality, but the idea of these undertones is to give that control back to you to decide. That said, I've tested all of them, and all it did was make me come to the conclusion that I prefer the standard one that iPhones have been using by default since the beginning. Okay, only other thing that I wanted to mention before we go to the Pro iPhones is at the launch event, Apple said that the glass on the front of these phones is 50% stronger than last gen. And that meant basically nothing to anyone because they didn't explain it. But I think I've managed to find out how now. So the problem with glass on its own is that the atoms within glass have a pretty weak structure. Their arrangement is disordered, which means that if you apply pressure to glass, the atoms can't smoothly glide over each other, so the material doesn't flex, it shatters. And so a few years ago, Apple realized that by infusing that glass with tiny clear pieces of ceramic, which has a much more organized 3D matrix of atoms, they could create more structure within the display, and therefore more ability to withstand pressure. And so the new thing this time around is they've improved the organization of ceramic within the glass, which increases the compressive stress capacity of the display. Or in other words, this might not be significantly less likely to crack, but if it does crack, that crack is a lot less likely to spread out across the entire screen. So there you go. I had to make sure I got to the bottom of that one. And that's basically it for all the new stuff that the iPhone 16s do, except for the action button, which the Pro phones had last year, a better battery, and Apple Intelligence, but I'm getting to that. Okay, time for the top-end phones. iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. They used to do this cool thing where the base phones had white packaging and the Pros came with black, but I guess that's officially buried now. Maybe the colored dyes were adding to the pollution. So this is the 16 Pro, which we have in the same natural titanium color as last year's phones came in. And then for the Pro Max, this is desert titanium, which is the only new color this year. I feel like Apple is really spacing out the innovation here. And honestly, to me, this feels disappointingly stale for the one flagship new color. But then while we're here, this is what the new cases look like. So it seems like fine woven cases are officially dead. That's probably for the best, but it's quite funny how much of a disaster that was. So we're back to silicon now. And this is, I mean, it's good quality, but it is expensive for a case. There's the new clear case, which I would personally never go for because they just get sticky and fingerprinty. And these are the new AirPods 4 with noise cancellation, which come with a set of papers for some reason, and then it's just the earphones in their case.
العب
أوراق محروقة.
محروقة هذه هكا وهذه 4 وهذه 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 هذا الشيء
يا هذا المحظوظ.
محظوظ هنا مخ ذكاء.
And I have tested these, by the way, so quick mini review. Good product. They don't feel too big in your